السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره، ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. إنه من يهده الله فهو المهتد، ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله، بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح للأمة، فكشف الله به الغمة، وتركنا على محجة بيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. فصلوات ربي وسلامه عليه وعلى آله. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، أرسل نبيه بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله. Inshallah, dear brothers and sisters, today we talk about a very important character, undisputed one. We talk about his journey and the destination. Sometimes people say it wasn't about the destination, it was about the journey. But today it's about both, the journey and the destination. This great man, he tells us his story himself. So he says that I was a young boy from Asbahan in Persia, min Faris. And he says, and I had a dad who loved me more than anything else. And he says, وَكَانَ مَجُوسِيًّا. He used to worship fire, his dad. So he says, so I worked hard towards that, to the extent that I became the one who tends to fire, making sure it never goes out. And he said, out of love for me, my dad confined me to our house, never let me out. He said, till one day, he was busy with a piece of land, he had some project to do in it. So he said to me, he wanted me to check on one of his businesses. So he said to me, I'm going to send you out to do that, but you are more important to me than anything else. So never be late, no matter what happens. He said, and it was the first time for me out. And on my way, I passed by a building where I heard people singing something that looked beautiful. So I entered. And it was so nice, I stayed there till it was sunset without keeping an eye on time. By the time I returned, my dad has already went crazy about me being absent. And he said to me, didn't I tell you that you are more important to me than anything else? He said, he told him what had happened. He said, oh dad, I heard that and that. So I stopped by this place. And he said to him, and dad, the religion that they have is much better than our religion. So his dad got concerned. He said, no, this is the religion of your father and your forefathers, and it's better than any other religion. He said, no, dad. And he told him about the songs and the instructions and the teachings that he had heard in that church. He said, but when my dad saw that from me, he got worried and he decided to chain me, actually chain me in the house. But he treated me well. He said, so I sent a message to the people in that church because I had asked them before about where does this religion come from, because it was not known in Persia. They said it comes from Sham, from Syria. So he said, I sent to them if there is any caravan, merchants or traders going to Syria, that they would tell me. He said, and came one day, and they actually sent me a message that there is a caravan coming from Syria and returning, and if you wish, you can come. He said, so I untied myself and I went. He was a little boy, and I went with that caravan to Syria. He said, and when I went there, I asked about the leader of this religion. So they guided him to a priest. So he went and he said, I'm going to stay with you, be your servant, tend to your needs, and all what I need is just you teach me more about this religion. He said, and he accepted, and I stayed with him. He said, but he was a bad man. He used to encourage people to support the poor and the needy, and when they give him the money, he wouldn't give it to the poor and the needy, and he had a place where he stores all the gold and the money, to the extent that he had 7 barrels full of that. He said, when he died, I couldn't keep it inside, so I told people about him. When they knew this, they didn't bury him. He said they crucified him and they stoned him to death. Like stoned him after he died, and they never buried him. He said, and he was replaced by a man whom I have never seen someone as good as him. He said, and I stayed with him and he taught me well. He said, till it was time and he was dying. So I asked him, I said to him, guide me to another person who would carry on teaching me. He said, son, I know of no one who follows this religion correctly but a friend of mine in Al-Mosul. So he's in Syria right now. So he said, a friend of me in Al-Mosul. Al-Mosul is in Iraq. So he said, so I went on my journey and I went to Al-Mosul. And when I reached there, I told him about my story and that I came on the recommendation of his friend who just passed away. He said he accepted me and he was just like him, a very good priest. He said, he taught me and I stayed with him till it was time that he was dying. Remember that this young boy left and he was very young, and all those in a place of a priest or someone who is a leader, they are normally of an old age. So imagine how many stops he went through. He says, and when it was time, I asked him the same question. So he said to me that there is only one man that I know of, and he is in Nasibin. And this is an area that falls right now in Turkey. So right now he's going to travel from Iraq to Turkey. So he says, and I went and I stayed with him. The same thing, serving him, taking care of him. And then it was time that he was dying. So I asked him to guide me to another, like mentor, another priest. He said, the only one whom I know of is someone is in Ammuriyah. This is a place in Turkey, but it's on the other side, like another long journey. He said, and I went, stayed with him and everything, till it was time that he was dying. All right, so from Persia to Syria, from Syria to Iraq, from Iraq to one side of Turkey, from that one side to another side of Turkey, searching for the truth. He said, the man in Ammuriya, he said, I served him and I had even saved, like for myself, that I owned a sheep and few cows. And when he was about to die and I asked him, he said, I know of no one, son. But it is time that the prophet who is going to appear at the end of time is going to appear. It's about time. I don't know where exactly, but he is going to be in a place between mountains and it's full of palm trees, dates trees. A place that in the land of Arabs. He was in the Turkish side. So he said, so I asked people till there was a caravan from a tribe called the Bani Kilab. He said, so I offered them my sheep and the few cows that I had and all the savings that I had so they can take me to that place. He said, but they betrayed me. They took my money and then they sold me as a slave. They sold me as a slave to a Jewish man from an area called Wadi al-Qura. It's outside Medina. He said, and when I reached there, I was so happy. Imagine someone being enslaved. Yeah? He said, because it looked similar to what my priest told me. It looked very similar to it. And I hoped that it would be it. He said, so I stayed there, serving my master, waiting for that prophet to appear. He said, for years and years. And then came one of his cousins from Banu Qurayza, actually from Yathrib, from Al-Madinah. He said, so he bought me from his cousin and he took me to Yathrib. He said, and once I saw it, I knew this is it. This is the place that the priest told me about. He said, so I stayed there serving my master till one day I was tending to one of the palm trees. I was on top of it and my master was sitting down there. One of his relatives came to him and he told him about a man who had come in Qiba and he is a messenger and people from different tribes are gathering around him. He said, I couldn't stand on top of that palm tree. I was shivering to the extent that I thought I was about to fall on my master. He said, I put myself together and I came down asking the cousin of, my master's cousin about this incident. He said, I was so excited. So I said, wow, what's going on? Who is that man? He said, so my master looked at me like he wasn't even supposed to talk or even discuss anything with them. He said, and he punched me so hard in the face and he said, what do you have to do with this? Go away. So right now, you see all that journey that he took and the destination was Medina, searching for the truth. And this was just one stop in his journey because there is more yet to come. So he says, on that day, I waited till it was night time so I can start another journey. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach us what guides us to the best in this dunya and in the hereafter. Seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We continue after the break. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله سيدنا محمد عليه وعلى آله أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم صل على محمد. Continuing with our man today and his journey and his destination. So right now, he is a grown-up man, probably from the narrations of Sirah, around 40 years old. You can imagine, so this journey almost took over 30 years of his life to reach that moment. He says, the last priest that I was with in Ammuriyah, when he told me about that man who is going to appear at the end of time, I said to him, and how would I know him? He gave me 3 signs that I can check to determine if this man is the true one or not. He said, so as my master's cousin told him that people gathered in Qiba, so I went to Qiba when it was night time. I had some dates and some food. So, under the cover of night, I went to Qiba. I found him surrounded by some of his companions. He said, so I said to them that you look like, people who have been traveling, and I had some sadaqah. So, and he said, and I handed him the food and the dates. He said he took it and he distributed it to the people around him, and he never touched it. He never ate from it. He said, and that was the first sign that I learned. He doesn't eat from sadaqah. He said, so the next day they had moved to Yathrib. He said, so I did the same thing, and I took some food, some dates, and I went and I gave it to him as a gift. He said he accepted it. He ate from it and he distributed the rest to his fellow companions. He said, and I said, and this is the second sign. He said the third one was hard to verify because it was about a seal of prophecy, a birthmark between his shoulders. And how would I be able to verify this? So he said, there was a janazah. He said, I went and I followed him. And I kept looking, maybe, part of his shoulder gets revealed so I can verify this. He said, and because I'm not paying attention, the man who is our beloved Prophet Muhammad alayhi wa ala alihi salatu wasalam, he noticed this. And he understood what I'm after. Because I kept leaning towards him, leaping, trying to see while he was burying someone. And I couldn't. He said, so he put his hand and he revealed part of his thawb. So I saw the seal of prophecy, and that was the third. At that moment, he said, I broke down in tears. Here is the destination. Over 30 years, such a long journey by a very young man to reach that moment, the verification that he needed. He said, so I couldn't stop crying. And I said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And I hugged him. And because of the situation, he asked me, what is going on? And then I told him my story. And he said, tell it to the rest of the companions. I think by now you know the man. The man known as Salman al-Farisi. The man whom the companions fought over whom he belongs to. Al-Muhajirun said, he belongs with us. He is a migrant. He's not from Medina. He even though he wasn't from Mecca, but he made such a journey. So they said, Salmanu minna. And then the people from Al-Ansar said, no, he is from Medina. He is not from Mecca. So we would classify him as one from Al-Ansar. Imagine Al-Muhajirun and Al-Ansar, the people who are praised the most in Quran. They are fighting over a man who is not an Arab even. Everyone is trying to take the honor that this man belongs to them. And then comes the Prophet alayhi wa ala alihi salatu wassalam, and he gives him the highest honor ever. And he says, Salmanu minna alul bayt. And that's why he was known as Salman al-Muhammadi, belonging to the family of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam. Such an honor that no one else had. Unless you are blood related, you cannot have this honor. He had it, one and only. No other story similar to that. From his journey and from his destination, there are loads and loads of lessons to be learnt. Is that one of the things that stops me every time I tell his story is how happy he is when he was a slave, figuring out that this is the place that maybe the Prophet is going to appear. You know, when you have a great goal, whatever happens in the way doesn't matter, because your eyes are set on a destination that makes everything else worthless. This is him. Like from his whole journey, you think, like the way he narrated his story, he doesn't talk about any of these troubles. He talks about, oh, and those people betrayed me, took me as a slave and sold me and have been serving like, my master for 10 years. As if it's just like, one of you say, oh, I woke up in the morning, I didn't find milk in the fridge and I went and I bought one. He gives it as simple as that. Why? Because the main goal, his eyes are set on the destination, meeting that man. Right, reaching that point in his life. So nothing else mattered. The point that he actually gets very emotional is the point that he reaches his destination and he finds the man that he was looking for. I mean, what a great lesson. So the thing is, if you find yourself really overwhelmed in this life, really that this life is taking a toll on you, know that your eyes are set on something else. Because if you have your eyes set on a destination like this, nothing happens in this life is going to matter. In Seerah, this situation and another one that I'm going to conclude with remind me of how when someone is really dedicated to something, nothing else matters. So we go to the master, whom everyone learned from, to our beloved Prophet Muhammad alayhi wa alihi salatu wasalam, and the time that he returned from At-Ta'if after the year of sadness, losing his uncle and his beloved wife, and all of this being tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you go through the details, and it's not the time for them, maybe in another khutbah inshallah. But then when the angel of mountains comes to him, trying to give him some comfort, before this he makes a dua. And in that dua he says, part of this dua, it's a very long one, he says, he complains to Allah about what he has been going through. But then he says, إِن لَمْ يَكُمْ بِكَ غَضَبٌ عَلَيَّ فَلَا أُبَالِي. Oh Allah, all of this, I'm not complaining because I feel hurt. I'm just suspecting that this may be a punishment because you are angry at me. So if you are not angry at me, then all of this doesn't matter. The destination, whatever he is having through the journey does not matter. إِن لَمْ يَكُمْ بِكَ غَضَبٌ عَلَيَّ فَلَا أُبَالِي. Of course, the journey of Sayyidina Salman starts there because he is a slave and he wants to follow the Prophet and he is a man of honor. So is the Prophet Muhammad alayhi wa alihi salatu wassalam. So another journey to begin inshallah, to be continued inshallah in another khutbah or another lesson. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as he made Sayyidina Salman reach his destination because of the sincerity that he had in his heart, that he plants this sincerity in our heart so our eyes are set on the great destination of being gathered around the Prophet Muhammad alayhi wa ala alihi afdalus salatu wassalam in al-Firdaus al-A'la. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us care about nothing but His Jannah, to make us go through this life with such a peaceful heart that it does not matter for you if you get or not, because it's always about the destination, it's always about akhirah. This dunya is not but a bridge for us to cross over to something that's eternal, something that is more beautiful. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا يا من اسمه رجاء وذكره شفاء ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء. اللهم اجمعنا على حوض نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم لنشرب من يده الشريفة شربة هنيئة لا نظمأ بعدها أبدا. اللهم اجعلنا من أصحابه ورفقائه في الفردوس الأعلى. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله في الأولين، وصل اللهم عليهم في الآخرين، وصل اللهم عليهم في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين. آمين آمين يا رب العالمين. وأقم الصلاة.